Welcome back to this latest episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, President, Dale Carnegie Tokyo Training. My special guest today is Akiko Karaki, who is the Managing Partner of Brunswick Group here in Tokyo. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Greg, for having me.
People may not be familiar with Brunswick Group and what you do, so just give us a very quick explanation of what your business is.
Sure. Brunswick Group is a consulting firm. We call ourselves an advisory firm, specializing in stakeholder engagement strategy. It's really about helping clients to engage with multiple stakeholders, which might agree on one thing, might not disagree on another thing. So we want to be strategic around how we engage with them, especially around critical timings, like when you had a great big plan that is to be announced, or M&A, or an activist coming to you, or an unfortunate disaster that you had to face, something like that. So any critical issues, we come in and help the companies to navigate through the stakeholders.
How did you get to become the managing partner of Brunswick Group? Just walk us back a little bit through your career. Give us an idea how you got to this job today.
Sure. So from the very beginning, I started my career as being an in-house lawyer for an investment bank. So that was my first career. I was an in-house lawyer in Japan. So
you're Bengoshi in the Japanese system, or a Gaiben?
I wasn't.
Okay.
So it was before the Japanese big ban, so-called. So it was the Japan financial market was pretty much like heavily regulated, even more than now. And then that time, the international investment banks wanted to have a lawyer. But the lawyers in Japan were also like very scarce, so very limited, hard to get. So what they decided was to hire somebody out from university, send them off to US, and then have them get the pass the bar, get the license, and then come back as a lawyer. Before that, they had me work for 3 years, I guess, in Tokyo office to just get to know the work and then be part of the team. And then they sent me to New York.
And this is for who? Who's a generous company?
It was JP Morgan.
JP Morgan. So JP Morgan's really investing heavily to develop someone like you. You came, I think you were at Todai, as I remember. So Tokyo University, JP Morgan says, no problem. We'll send her off to, was it Columbia, I think, Columbia University. You do a master's degree, actually, and do the bar, New York bar, is it?
New York bar, yes.
At the same time, right? And then you come out of that with an American lawyer, basically. So in a way you probably didn't go ahead and try and become a Gaiben in Japan, but you could have become. You could have become. Well, you did become?
No, I didn't.
No, you didn't bother, right?
But
you worked in the job.
But
right?
it's good ROI, right? So it's basically they have to pay, I don't know how much more for a Japanese bengoshi if they had to have one. So they had.
You're a bargain.
Exactly. So they maybe worked like crazy for 3 years.
Columbia for 3 years.
It does pay off.
Much better deal.
So they're quite clever.
Okay. And then, so you're working as in-house legal head there, and then what happens after that?
So I worked there for 7 years actually. So it was a very interesting time. So I got my bar, but also was able to go through the financial liberalization in Japan, which was quite exciting. Get to see equity derivatives being illegal to legal. And then went through all the,
sort of becoming semi-legal again later.
Exactly.
It's
always fun to be in this like changing world. And then 7 years afterwards, first of all, JP Morgan was acquired by Chase. So it became a different company really. And then the liberalization got stabilized in a way. Japan had to go through like financial crisis as well. So I saw lots of major institution collapsing at that time, which was really heartbreaking. But 7 years, all of that came to one kind of like a nice stabilized situation where I thought, well, actually, I really enjoyed working hand in hand with the CEO to navigate through this really changing dynamics. Then I decided to join McKinsey and Company, which is a strategy consulting firm that really
famous McKinsey.
Famous McKinsey. At that time, which was 20 years ago, McKinsey was still
Was Kenichiro Mai the president of
right
that time?
after his departure.
Just as he departed.
Yeah,
he's like a legend, isn't he?
Exactly.
Mai, yeah.
But you can actually feel that he was here because many people that I work with was actually working directly with Kenichiro Mai. So they often talk about him and they follow his footsteps. It was challenging, but also exciting, all the mixed thing. So that was my first big career shift, that I decided to work not in the legal world, but really to help with the management of the company to navigate through their strategy and business. I stayed there for 2 years and learned the thank you for saying that. It was really hard work.
Oh, yeah, I mean, people don't understand how crazy the hours are. And in a lot of cases, I guess mainly for the Americans, they're doing a lot of travel as well. The consultants, they're traveling, they're working grueling hours. I mean, it's a brutal industry, really, in many ways.
Yeah, Japan is a little better because everything is pretty much in Tokyo.
Right,
so I have to go to Osaka, Kyoto, those
that's
areas.
Nothing compared to what the Americans
Exactly.
do. Yeah.
Some teams are very lucky. They get to go to Okinawa, for example, for a project. That's like, okay, I want to go there. So that's great. But I didn't get to do that. But yeah, 2 years. Not really only about the working hours. It was really, really super intense. So you really have to work like 24 hours, always focused. I thought 2 years is enough to like really master the basics of consulting. That time I decided to, I was also very tired as well. So I decided to just give me a little break. Went back to investment bank for one time. And then just pull myself back to really see what is it that I wanted to do. And that around that time, I worked for a lot of companies. Like after McKinsey, I went to work for Calyon Securities, which is part of Crédit Agricole, French financial institution. Then I helped privatization of Japan Post, which was also exciting, that you get to design the 5 new companies to emerge from one public company. Did that for 2 years. Then I decided, then it was the Lehman shock day time, so 2008. I was at Japan Post. I had an option to go back to Calyon Securities, actually. But the Lehman thing was coming and you can feel it. So it was a choice of do I want to go to investment banks? Do I want to stay at Japan Post? Or what is it that I want to do? Then at that time, I bumped into my previous colleague at McKinsey who was working at Booz & Company, another consulting firm. Okay. And he was like, hey, Akiko, what are you doing? And I came back to the strategy consulting.
We call that, in English, out of the frying pan into the fire, right? So you're going back to investment, I should say consulting after McKinsey, right? At a very incredible time, with the Lehman shock.
Yeah,
that must be amazing.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. Right after the Lehman shock, I joined Booz & Company. So again, I was involved in major acquisitions and PMI and everything. But yeah, I think it was a timing where Japan started to make the first step of change. We started to learn and really trying to embrace how an international firm is working on certain things, business planning, people development, et cetera. Because I feel very lucky that I was able to be involved in that. And since then, I do sound like a job hopper. And since then, it was 15
years.
Days,
it doesn't matter. I mean, once upon a time, there was a stigma about changing companies because they had plenty of people to choose from and lots of options, and you're jumping around, we don't need you. Today, companies could not care less about job hopping because they can't get people. So, it's the whole emphasis, the weight of it has changed completely.
I do, though. If you can stay with one firm, that's better to stay longer. You'll make larger impact. You understand people better. You understand the business better. But if you cannot, I don't think you should hesitate to leave and find your next place for you. I was able to stay with Booz, which was acquired by PwC eventually for 15 years. So there I was very comfortable, quite enjoyed working there. I still really like PwC, Booz colleagues. Now it's called Strategy and I stayed there until 2023, October. That was a total 15 years. And it was about 20 years since I joined McKinsey. So that time I thought, well, I did strategy consulting long enough. 15 years or 20 years, either way, I feel like I've been here for a long enough time. I mastered, I wouldn't say mastered enough, but minimum master. And then I started to think that Japan really lacks engagement skill set. So when you see international global markets, you see Japanese companies being quite shy, quite traditional, quite reserved, trying to be very polite, not speaking up. And I almost feel like they're missing a lot of opportunities. And whatever strategy, great strategy, beautiful strategy that you develop, if you don't engage with people, it's not going to happen. So I started to feel like, okay, I have my remainder of my professional life. This is what I wanted to do. It's really about stakeholder engagement. And I found Brunswick that time. And I was like, okay, this is what I wanted to do.
And where's a job that allows you to do that? It's a very specific thing you're talking about.
It's specific, and it is also quite broad. So I now lead the Tokyo office. I'm always saying that we have 3 pillars for the office. Globally, we do much more. But at the moment, in Japan, for Tokyo office, we have, first of all, our large practice is regulatory affairs. So if Japanese companies wants to go to EU or US, and creating a regulatory environment for them in Japan is quite easy because larger corporation has been doing that for a long time. Outside of Japan, it is a different story. So if you want to work with the EU commissioner or people in DC, you really have to find the right people with the right way of speaking to them. We can help companies to do that. So that's one pillar. The second one is the capital markets related. So more and more Japanese companies are acquiring companies outside of Japan, targeted by unsolicited bids. They might want to do a privatization deal, or they might be targets of an activist. In that situation, always stakeholder engagement is critical. Because how you use the media, how you engage with your stakeholder, like shareholder, employee, regulator from time to time, that is super critical to navigate through. Bank, well, yes, exactly. If you want to delist, that's most important. So we can help companies to navigate through that. What is it that you want to tell to whom, in what order? That's quite important. So that's the second pillar, which is like, last year has grown a lot. This year we're very busy for that. The third one has been our traditional area, which is crisis management. Any company would face crisis, unfortunately. So if you have an accident, if you have...
the whole world's facing one right now with the tariffs coming out of America.
Yes.
I think your skill set is right in the right position here.
We get asked a lot of
people
questions.
Are going to need help here.
So that thing as well, you want to deal with the right stakeholder the right way, and we're here to help clients.
So thinking back in your career, I mean, at different points, I guess, you've had staff. At other points, you've been a sort of individual operator, I guess, as a consultant. Probably don't have a lot of people reporting to you. Investment banks, maybe had staff, maybe a long career, which sort of booze, PwC, and then, it was a long period of time you had staff. So thinking back when you've had staff reporting to you, what did you find worked well to get teams to be engaged to follow you as a leader?
I feel it now actually the strongest because previously I did have a team, but it was more of an assigned team.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's really like people that I was involved in hiring and
Mm-hmm.
training and,
So what's the difference between the two? What's the difference
really,
between here's your team, meet your team that exists, your predecessors train them, and now you turn up, and then the other one is, well, you're hiring them as they come in. There's a difference there. What's the difference between those two ways of doing things?
It's really setting the direction of starting from what is it that we were doing. So because Brunswick is globally, I'd say like a mid-size advisory firm. We're not small, we're not huge, but we have a decent size. Because of that, we do cover a wide range of issues. And I wouldn't want to do everything in Japan because we just established Tokyo office 4 years ago. So we're quite new. We're not that scale to be able to do everything. So we want to be focused. And I want to be focused around things that would be needed by clients here. So you have to be selective in how we can be helpful for clients. And why do we want to do that? So those two things would pretty much define what kind of people we want to have, and then also what really motivates us, what makes us excited. And I think that's really about like taking the team with me to a certain direction.
So were you the second managing partner? There was someone who's kicked it off in Tokyo and then you took over?
Yes.
So you did have some people already hired by your predecessor, and then you could, as you grown the team, you could go and get your own selections, I guess. So, thinking about two varieties there, what did you find worked well to get, say, the existing team members who are here before you? And what worked well to get the new team members you hired to be engaged to follow you?
So having people who were here before me was super important as they were the link and the basis. So link to the broader firm and the basis of the Tokyo office. Because they were here, I was able to think through what is it that we can actually offer here. Because I need to start from somewhere. There's the pull, the market situation, but we also have to have some kind of push. The balance between the push and the pull is quite important to build a successful business from my perspective.
So in that sense, push means what? Means targeting industries or targeting companies or targeting problems? Or what are we targeting there?
So for our specific case, it is targeting specific issues. So the problems, as you say.
So you say, okay, we are going to get into this issue solution area, and we're going to look for companies who need that solution.
Yeah.
Doing it that way.
Yeah. Okay. So I had people who were interested in regulatory affairs, and they're brilliant. So no question, we push it. I also had people who were interested in capital markets related issues, and they were also brilliant. So we pushed it, and then the market was there. So you have to do simultaneously. You have the people, then I see an opportunity there. It's like, okay, so great matching. Hence, I had these three pillars now.
And did you also go the other way where you may have seen an opportunity but didn't have the people and you hire the people in? Did that also not come up?
Yeah, it did come up.
Right?
Yes. So as you see more opportunity, you know what is it that you're missing and what kind of people you are looking for. And then It's very strange when you start looking. People do show up.
Do they?
They do. Yeah, I was like, I want this kind of super special person. For example, I just welcomed my new partner to the office. We're now a three-partner business now. And one partner is internally promoted. The other partner is like we hired from external just 2 months ago. He comes from investor community. Comes from BlackRock. And we were looking for somebody who can understand capital markets because capital markets practice is such a growing market for us. And then he popped up. So yeah, I do believe in the destiny or like luck but it's quite important to keep telling yourself that I need this kind of person.
And in terms of getting a good relationship with people, getting them engaged in their work, say following you, what things have you found work well to get people really engaged in their work?
When do they be engaged?
No, what makes them feel engaged? You are hiring well-paid, highly intelligent, capable people. Okay, so some people might think, oh, they don't need any love and care because they're already highly motivated and they've got all they need. But that's not the case. Everyone needs encouragement. Everyone needs appreciation. Everyone needs to feel that they're special. So there's some degree of engagement required, and there's different ways of doing it. I'm just wondering, what have you found? Because some people can be a type of dictator, just shooting out orders. But today, people have choices. They don't want that sort of leader. They're like, no, I don't like that. I'm out of here. And then you've got to replace them. If you're like that leader, you'll be replacing a lot of people regularly. But so what have you found, though, works well to get people to follow you and be engaged?
I do see they're all different. So some people would want to be left alone. So they want to do their own stuff and they just want you to just be kind of like up somewhere near to observe and like step in if needed, but otherwise just, be quiet, leave them alone. Other people really want you to like work hands in hands, more like hands-on. Maybe it's because I've been a consultant for a long time. I'm happy to adapt to those different styles. So it's really about embracing the diversity. What is it that people feel comfortable with? But one thing that is quite consistent is that the ownership is there. And then you really like ask for the ownership to be there, but people would want to have the ownership, and that's the kind of the people that is needed in this firm. So we hire those people, but you really respect the ownership. Then people start to be engaged, and there's like, okay, this is my business. This is how I want to build a business. The how is different depending on the person, but if the ownership is there, it's really easy to engage with them.
The point you're making there is that you can't have a single leadership approach. It's person by person. This person wants freedom. Okay. No good micromanaging that person. They're going to leave. This person wants some more collaboration, consultation, bounce ideas off. It's no good just leaving them on their own. They'll get upset and they'll quit and they'll go somewhere else. So it's one by one, isn't it, really? But it's also knowing what they need. If you're just shouting out orders all day long, you don't know what the hell they need. If you're telling them what they need, you do this, do that. So you never appreciate what's happening on their side, right? In terms of ideas, I mean, you've been a consultant, you've been in, investment banking, you've legal, head of legal. You've done a lot of things. So you have also graduated from Columbia, did your studies in the States, you come back to Japan, you speak English, you're a very natural person. So I can easily imagine that with your background, you've got a lot of ideas. You've got a lot of vision. You're part of the group, so you're getting a lot of information from headquarters. However, the people who are here also have ideas. And how do you get that balance between, I know what to do, here we go, and actually finding out the ideas from them about what we could do? You know? So what have you found works well to get ideas from people who work for you?
Oh, you talk a lot. I think that's almost like the only solution. One thing that is different between Brunswick and the firms that I've been with before Brunswick is the diversity, the level of the diversity. Because for McKinsey, PwC strategy, and as a traditional strategy firms, they do have a standardized way of thinking, standardized way of working, and standardized way of developing people. So it's almost like if you say one word, a specific word like problem solving or what is the issue, it has a special meaning that everybody gets it. And how you write the chart as well. So how you do a PowerPoint deck, it's quite standardized. You speak the same language pretty much. And it is very efficient. But sometimes the diversity or the out-of-the-box thinking could be lost because you are so standardized. You understand each other too easily. Here, which is almost like on the other end of the spectrum. So I come from the consulting background. My partner comes from BlackRock. He's from investment community. The other partner comes from 20 years of Bank of Japan experience. We have another partner in London who have a long experience as a diplomat. So all those people, government officials, investor, consultants, we also have a journalist, all sorts of background people coming on the same platform. They speak this different language. So it is sometimes quite challenging to get to the same level or same understanding at beginning and start understanding each other. It does take time. But once you start understanding the other people's like mind, how do they think, what is it that matters, and how do we approach issues, it kind of like widens your spectrums. It like really gives you a broader way of thinking. And I think that's the power of diversity.
It's power of diversity. And also, I guess, there's one thing to have that diversity, have those differences, but how do you get the ideas out? Because, you know, you're probably getting hundreds of emails a day. You got meetings with clients, with internal meetings, headquarters, blah, blah, blah. You know, the time in the day becomes very compressed and limited to actually spend time getting ideas out of people and hearing their viewpoint. The fact they've got different viewpoints is fantastic, but if you never get the viewpoint differences out, well, who cares? You know? Might as well have the same idea. So how have you found works well to get the ideas out of their head and into your head?
I think it's really about having a common goal. That is quite important. Because unless you have that, it's just a waste of time, to be honest. So if you have an issue that client wants to solve, or if you have something they want to achieve yourself, you just make it very clear. And often it has been shared amongst the leadership team of the firm or the team. Then everybody's working towards that. It will be easier for you to like get people's like ideas out of their mind. It's like, you know, this is my idea. I think something is missing. What would you say? And then you'll start to get a great idea.
So do you not have, I mean, you're in the sort of the most analytical, structured companies like McKinsey, you know, Booz, PwC, where they're
pretty much follow the same standards.
Is doing that type of analytical work, right? So, and I'm sure they don't just do it based on one individual. They're using specialist teams who come together and then somehow they gather all those ideas together. So was there not an umbrella method? Like here, I could say the McKinsey method or the Booz method or the PwC method or whatever to get ideas out. Did any of those things happen for you that you could use those, or is there such a tool for you?
There is, but getting new idea, I think it's really if you're the only person involved, it is really about how to expand your solution space. It's really about how can you expand the way you think about certain things, because you have your own starting point. If I were to be thinking about how do I sell this water more, I can just think what I would think is what are the competitors doing, what are being done in other markets. So change the market, change the company, or go back or the history. You just be comparative. That is a typical thing. If I could be in the center, and then if you go to other product, for example, well, the water is being sold this way, but let's think about how you sell an airplane and then see what it implies to selling water, something like that. It's like, and then you start applying things, and then you start to get new ideas. That is typically how you expand your thinking. That's also critical thinking, because you're trying to stay away from the traditional and what is standard in a way of selling this water. That I can do if I stretch myself a lot. If you have an expert in selling an airplane right next to you, suppose I ask, I get an idea from how you sell a book or how you sell an idea from you, then it will be a really easier time spending for me to really think about this. So I could use the methodology in a structured way from McKinsey or other areas. I would say with the combination of the variety of experts in-house at Brunswick, it'll be easier to come to the end solution. I think that's what I'm feeling at the moment.
If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. Leading is easy. Getting people to follow is the hard part. That is a great quote from Yogi Berra. Surprisingly, despite the complexities of leading here in Japan, everyone has to work it out by themselves. Foreign leaders want practical, applicable, expert advice. This is now available for the first time in history. Grab your copy of Japan Leadership Mastery on Amazon today and avoid the mystery, trial and error, especially the errors. And what about building trust? With the different teams you've led, in some cases, you came in and then maybe you were promoted up, or you came into the top like this one, and you've got different individuals working for you in the different facets of the industries you've been in. What's something you've found worked well to build trust with people to follow you?
I'd say there's two things probably. First of all is to deliver, always deliver.
So, deliver what? For who?
So
you mean deliver for the client?
It's all individual. So you're working with 10 people. It's really one-to-one, 10 variation of trust that you need to build. I don't think there's one versus the team.
Right.
It's really about one-to-one.
Again, it's individual.
Yes. So if I said, okay, let's build a capital markets practice together. I really want to deliver something. So I'm really desperate to find the first client to just make sure that I deliver to my commitment to this person. I probably do the same to all of them. For the other person, I might say like, okay, we are predominantly a Japanese team at the moment, but we do have English native speakers who can speak Japanese. So to keep the international environment, let's make official meetings in the office English. I try to keep that commitment. So I'm trying to deliver on that.
How many native speakers would you have here?
At the moment, we have 3 English native speakers. All the others, we have about 15. All the others are Japanese natives. But those things that, you keep delivering, it's just, and manage expectation along the way, because I cannot fully deliver all the time. Just make sure that I deliver at certain level, always. That's one thing. It's the same between the client and the team as well. So if you have a client, I always deliver, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to continue as a consultant. But that's number one. And number two is about expectation management. So really want to just make sure that you have set the right level of expectation amongst the team that comes back to the delivery. Then the third one is really to be transparent. It's also coming back to the expectation.
What does being transparent mean there?
You want to be...
So if you're feeling grumpy, you should be grumpily transparent?
That one I wouldn't do. That one I wouldn't do. I do want to be quite transparent around what am I thinking, or how do I see the office growing? What are the logics for that? And what are the constraints around that as well? That I would be transparent. I wouldn't do a grumpy thing. If I'm feeling, there's sometimes that I do feel anxious. I would try not to show that. Team might be feeling that, but I would try not to do that, because
we're the boss. If we bring a grumpy mood to the office, we kill everybody's mood immediately, right?
That's bad.
Everyone's down.
Exactly.
Even if we're feeling not particularly up, somehow we've got to look like we're
you just try to be smiling. Yes.
Always smiling.
Yes.
It's going to be fine.
Yes. But coming back to the transparency part, I feel it is very damaging if people are not convinced of something. So they've been told to do something, but they're just unsure. Why am I asking that? It's not always logical. So sometimes there's this a firm's direction or some kind of political situation that's happening, but we need to navigate through and we need to get through it. I'll try to be open about that. This isn't 100% logical, but look, we want to be good citizens. Let's do this. Something like that.
I think there's always that transparency is important in trust. What other things have you found are important for trust building?
The other thing is really like bread and butter, but spending longer time together does really help.
How do you do that? They're busy.
They're busy.
You're busy.
Yeah.
Time's limited.
Let's
spend more time together. But actually, I've got this meeting to go to. I've got this report to do. I've got to see this client. And it never happens, right? So how do you manufacture the time to make that happen?
So we are trying to come back to the office, which has been pretty much successful. People are, I think,
stop working at home and
70% back in office. So you get to see, here and there, like chit chat and
what made you make that change?
It was from my predecessor.
Okay. Predecessor did that already.
Yeah, he wanted to bring people back. And then we were talking how do we do that? And then we had one person who's committed to come, and she's there for 9 to 5. Then other people started to come in. Really people following the examples that really started to happen. Then Brunswick is a couple of months ago announced that we're in-person firm is I think what the management
company globally said.
Yeah.
Everyone come back.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes, basically. They're saying in person, so it's not in office. It could be with the clients or it could be other places, but in person, just like this. Then I think it came after that. We decided to just spend an effort being back in office. So it was started from one person, then we started assigned seats. We gave them a locker to put their stuff in. And then we started doing fun stuff every month, Funswick. We call it Funswick. Last year, the first one was let's walk together. So it was 2 weeks competition. So we had group of 4 competing with each other, and the team that had the highest footsteps as a team is going to win, and you could go to yakiniku. So those things, you try to do something fun, and yeah, it started to like stay. People like call people back to the office, and it's easier to work together.
Yeah, I think remote offers a lot of flexibility, but there's a downside, I think, in terms of team communication, culture, stickiness. There's a lot of aspects. It's a complex picture, isn't it?
It is.
And just talking about culture, like you have Brunswick group culture, global. You have Japan culture because we're here, and then you have your culture as a leader. How do you build a culture in an organization? What have you found works well to build a culture?
As a strategy consultant, when I were asked how do I change my corporate culture, the answer was quite straightforward. Culture is an accumulation of behaviors. So what you say, what you do, that is accumulating, and it will be a culture. That's why I will be part of the large portion of the culture here, just like the other team members as well. So we're all like contributing to the culture. So the question is, how do we create the right kind of behaviors, right kind of like sayings? How do we talk to each other?
How does that fit under the umbrella culture for Brunswick globally? Because that's all very well in Japan, but Japan also has quite a strong history in corporates becoming a little island. It's an island anyway, Japan, but within the corporate world of that company, Japan becomes this isolated little island that's sort of running by itself off to the side here and doesn't really plug into the mother culture anywhere.
Yeah.
So how do you balance that to have that internal thing happening, but you've got this global culture that you've got to fit into as well? How do you get that balance right?
So I'm trying to do a couple of things. Trying to make an effort, first of all, to be plugged in, which is quite important. And for that, my predecessor was somebody from Britain. So he was a British, and he was a long-time Brunswick person. So it was easy for him to be plugged in. So for me, it is very different. I'm Japanese. Can't do that naturally. So I'm trying to think about how do we be plugged in by connecting more with our team in London. By the way, I might have forgot to mention this, but we have a team in Tokyo, but we also operate as a virtual team Japan. So we do have team members in Singapore, London, DC, and New York. So we do work 24 hours around the clock, literally. But at the same time, we are connected through our colleagues in London to the London office, New York to the New York office. So it is easier to be plugged in if we wanted to do that. So that I'm doing. And like I mentioned, I try to do the official meetings in English so that we just don't forget that we're part of this larger firm, because that's our strengths.
And it's easy for Japan to do that, I think. It's easy for Japan to become very insular very quickly. Yeah, so that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
And in terms of if you're going to give some advice to someone who is being sent to Japan to run the organization here, but they don't know Japan. They've not worked here before. They don't speak the language. And they rang you up and they said, hey, Akiko, I'm being sent out to Japan. I'm going to run the company there, big operation. You're the expert. What should I do? How should I be effective as a leader in Japan? What advice would you give them?
I do encounter those situations.
You do? Well, this would be great. You've got all the answers for me. Bing, bing, bing. Let's go.
Yeah. So what I do, just make sure that I tell is, please do try listen more than you speak. Because it is extremely hard for a Japanese person to speak more than a person who is especially an English native speaker, even if it's not an English native speaker. Japanese people is like, first of all, it's English, so we feel shy in English, and before English, we're already shy. Silence is gold for a Japanese. So, and they might have something to say, but they're not able to say that if you speak a lot. So just listen more than you speak is the first thing that I would advise.
It's a good point, isn't it? Because you always have that fundamental cultural difference of Japanese are comfortable with silence and no communication. They do not feel there's a breakdown in the relationship because we're not talking. But in a Western context, if we're not talking, something's wrong. The relationship's breaking down. So I have to make a bigger effort to talk more to restore the relationship. But it just spirals out of control into something crazy, right? So I think if you don't know that, if you don't know that that's actually quite a difference in comfort, and maybe is silence and you're feeling uncomfortable because there's silence, that's you. Your Japanese counterpart's not feeling uncomfortable with the silence. They're quite okay with it. So calm down, don't worry about it. If you know that. If you don't know that, then you fall into the trap, and that's why you just speak and pound people to death.
And you're feeling you're overwhelming the other party, which is not good. You might want to ask questions in a nice way, in a slower, low key mode, and then try get them to speak if they are feeling like that. Easy questions that could be helpful, because some Japanese really don't want to speak, but some Japanese do want to speak, but just looking for the opportunity to do that.
And why do the people who don't want to speak not want to speak?
I'd say they are shy, but they are also not comfortable with you yet. So they're kind of like
the trust
looking.
Is not there, maybe?
As you say, it's that the trust is coming, but it takes time to build trust. So don't rush into there. Don't try masculinely open that up, because that would scare people. So that's number one. Number two is Japanese people would typically not complain. So if there's things that they're not feeling comfortable with, they wouldn't speak up.
They won't tell you.
They won't tell you. No. I heard there's an interesting data in like call centers where if you run an international business with call center, you get less score in Japan. So the customers aren't calling you, but if the rate of their stop doing business with you is lower, it doesn't really mean that. So pretty much they will stop dealing with you, but they're not just complaining. It's gonna happen the same way in the workplace. So you all of a sudden might have somebody who is coming to you saying, I'm tired of this, I'm not paid enough, or you have all these things. I haven't been telling you. What is the point about telling you? Because there's no culture of negotiation. So once you tell and give them something, they'll consider that to be the final offer, and they'll either take it or leave it. So really have to be considerate. If you think you have a good deal and that person accepted, don't take it for granted. If that is way off market standard, or you don't see a happy face in that person, just be conscious about that.
It's interesting, isn't it? The not speaking up, afraid to speak up. So you're not having good communication. You're not actually uncovering the issues, and therefore you can't lead people very easily. It's a tricky combination. What else would some other advice you give them?
Then the third one is probably really to be yourself, because Japan is trying to change, and Japan has a very rigid culture, but it is also quite generous to somebody who is trying to come in and try to adopt themselves. So if you are bringing in new ideas, which you think is being helpful for the team or the person, I'd be really comfortable and confident about it, and that comes from my personal experience. Like I grew up in this environment as a female, so it's all masculine.
Yeah, talk about that in a moment.
Market. But I did have a mentor that is coming from Australia. She was one of the first senior partners in Booz, and she was a female, first of this female senior partner. And then she came to Japan, and there's many things that surprised her. And she was really open about it. So it's like, it doesn't have to be this way. And that really opened my eyes. And that really saved me. So I would really encourage anybody who's coming into Japan to do the same. If something wrong, something should be different, don't adapt too much.
One thing I'd say to people too is if you put up an idea in Japan, it's quite common that your staff will start tearing it apart and pointing out all the things that could possibly go wrong, which we can very easily interpret as, they're negative to my idea. They're against my idea. But actually, in their mind, they're not negative or positive to the idea. They're doing a type of internal due diligence to go through all the possible things that could go wrong before we do anything more, so they don't go wrong, and to tease out the, danger zones and whatever. But all you hear is negative feedback, and you go, well, what's wrong with these people? They're right, they're so negative. They should be more positive about my idea. What's wrong with it? But it's not that. If you know that, and I suffer from this too, even now, after so many years here, I put up the idea and then all I get is just complaining about the idea. Like, what's wrong with you people? Then I have to remind myself, that's right, they're doing the due diligence for me here. They're trying to save me from myself. I should just listen to it, but don't take it personally, because it's easy to take it personally, right?
Yeah, like it could very well be. And you feel like your great idea, really like spiky great idea, is being rounded, it's becoming more boring. But you really have to just stick to this is the line that I wanted to keep, and I'm happy to take the risk. So can I take this risk? You might want to say that as well.
What else would you tell them?
I'd say it's pretty much. I'm very much optimistic about Japan and excited about Japan.
How is that?
I do think Japan is starting to change finally. It took a long time. Since when? Probably started to change around the preparation of the Olympics. Like people were planning for it. There's some incidents around gender diversity that finally people started to speak up about, okay, we have to change. About the social structure, about Japanese people being too centered around Japan. Our growth opportunity might be outside of Japan. Let's go seek for it. I think it started to happen. And now that our population is shrinking, and
apparently
people
we're losing one Nihonjin every 2 minutes or something. I read somewhere.
Which is scary, but that's reality.
Wow, okay.
That's reality. So people, I think, are finally starting to say, let's face it. I wouldn't say everything is perfect, but people started to try make the change at least.
Well, one of the things around this podcast that I seek to have more female voices. And so when I meet someone like you, who's the head, I do my best sales pitch to get you to come on the podcast. And thank you for agreeing. I have to say, though, that my failure rate is high in two groups, Scandinavian men and Japanese women, for different reasons.
Okay.
But they're very high failure rate in those two groups. So I always think to have more female voices on the podcast. I'm never going to get, a balance 50-50. You just aren't enough female executives at that level.
You have a long list.
Population-wise, it's just never going to happen. However, I think it's important for women who are thinking, should I put my hand up? Should I try and become a leader? Any words of advice for women who are in that situation, who might be thinking, should I, shouldn't I? How would you tell them?
I'd say try it. Try it. It is probably more easier than you think, and you'll be supported more than you think, and you have more freedom because you get to decide things yourself. So it might feel like you're facing a huge wall or something, if you are
Or
to be
ceiling.
promoted, or, or a ceiling.
Glass ceiling, or maybe it's a brick ceiling, I don't know.
Yeah, but if people around you are encouraging you to do something, I'd say trust the people around you who are encouraging you, and then try it, because the people who are around you knows and understand you, and they are saying perhaps you can do it, and maybe you can do it, and I think you would be able to do it. I really enjoyed. I'm glad my partnership was really like that. My mentor, who was a senior partner, was a Dutch guy. He said, "Hey, you want to be a partner?" And I was like, What are you doing? What are you saying? Because I wasn't seeing myself as a partner at that time. But he said, well...
Typical direct Dutch fashion. You want to be a partner?
Yes.
Get
I
to
was
the
so
point
surprised, yes. But I trusted him. I really respected him. And then he's asking that, like, made me think, okay, it might worth a try. And I was like, if you think it's going to work, I might want to try. I would want to try. And then I tried doing that. It was challenging at the beginning. I wouldn't say it's easy, but I do think it is a worth try, and it is also rewarding. Probably it's also better in terms of like managing time. It will be, you get to manage things. So I wouldn't say it's less time, but it's manageable in a way.
I guess, Japan in general, people fear failure. So the best way to not fail is not to do anything. So not raising your hand is the best choice to not fail as a leader. That's one thing. And also you've got this sort of fear of men who might have some sexist attitude to women becoming leaders and not want to follow a woman who's a leader. They fear that perhaps. And then they also might have a fear of the sisterhood. Some of the sisterhood are not so supportive, and they're bitching and knives in the back. Why is she going ahead? And they fear that as well. So there's a lot of fear around stepping. How did you think about getting out of that fear zone and actually going forward? How do you make that break out of sort of gravitational pull of fear?
I think I stopped thinking about it at one point.
Stop worrying about it.
Yeah.
Just do it.
I was talking to my a friend, it's a female friend, and then she was saying, I have 3 arrows on my back, and then after getting the third one, I don't know how many I have at the moment. I don't feel it anymore. It's a little sad, but once you're in that zone, you're like, you can start shutting down things, like okay, it's human beings, so like certain chemistries with one person and the other person, but if you don't work out with this person, what I typically do is to ask somebody else to just make sure that relationship is there. It doesn't have to be me. Just work as a team, and yeah, you can find a way like that.
You can. Any other advice for female leaders, prospective female leaders, or ladies who want to step
I say
up?
though, sisterhood is important, and friendship is also important. That's the supporter. So you have people who's going to stab you from the back or like shoot at you from the back. That's true, but at the same time, there'll be people who's going to be protecting you. They'll be supporting you. They understand you. They really encourage you to take more, do more. Same thing happened when I decided to take on the post, the managing partner role from my predecessor. I was like, I wanted to be a happy semi-retired partner doing just the client job. So I never wanted to do a Tokyo office head, or looking after the office means a lot of work. So I was like thinking, maybe not. And I was talking to my friend, who's a male friend, and from my previous work, and he was like, why don't you do that? I mean, it doesn't really make sense, because you're the most committed, and you want somebody else who is less committed to you than you to come in, and it's like, okay, this makes sense.
Makes sense.
And I decided to do that. So people around you are your largest supporter. You're gonna also support your mental. They'll be caring about you. If you want to be grumpy, I can go to my friends outside of the office. And then, just between us, I can't really cope with this. Those things could happen. They are very, very important to you. So male friends, female friends, it is super important.
Are there any groups that prospective female leaders could join in terms of, that sisterhood idea of women who are in leadership roles, or I don't know. I mean, there are chambers of commerce for Geishke type of people that can gather together and have support. You have things like the, chambers of commerce or different associations in Japan tend to be mainly for men. But I'm just wondering, are there some type of business groups for female leaders they can join and get support?
There's many actually.
Are there?
No,
Okay.
yeah. So there's one at PwC that I established. I'm a co-founder, still keep the title of co-founder, called Women in Action.
Is that only for PwC people?
No, it is open for client female executives.
Okay.
I think.
Right.
Don't know how they set up the qualification, but it's pretty much open to female leaders or female, I would say future leaders, but female leaders and / future leaders as well. I think there's like 50 or 60 people joining that. So they meet like every quarter. So if you contact PwC, look up the Women in Action. That's one. I also know Deloitte is doing a similar initiative called Together. To Get Her. I think that's a very clever name called Together. And I also was a mentor for I think it's a program called Beyond, which is coach female future leaders how to be a better leader. And then they have mentors like myself or other very interesting female leaders to coach you to go through the program.
Okay, so there are, if you dig around, you find some good places. What's your definition of leadership?
I'd say what I'm conscious about is to always show the direction. So you have what you're doing, which can probably run without me, especially without me. But if you want to go somewhere far, you say, I want to go to that mountain. Somebody who start to say that I want to go to that mountain is part of the leadership. The other thing is the way to the mountain isn't easy. So you can't be grumpy. There might be people who are feeling tired or who is feeling lack of energy or wants to do something else for a short time. Just taking care of those things that are missing or that needs to be filled would be also my role. Just make sure that the team is in the right condition. Along the way would be my think of the leader. So those two things, make sure that these things are satisfied.
Great. Thank you very much for today.
Thank you very much.
Your very first podcast successfully completed. Well done. So please join us again for our next episode of Japan's top business interviews.